The beeping from the heart monitor was steady, almost calming, until I realized I wasn't alone. "She's not going to make it through rehab," a voice whispered beyond the curtain. "We should list the ranch while it's still uncontested." I didn't open my eyes. I didn't move. My hand slid slowly across the blanket fingers, searching for the shape of my phone. The voice was unmistakable, "Brittany. Drew has power of attorney, so we're fine legally. I just need to get a realtor in before she gets discharged. This kind of opportunity won't last." I found the phone, unlocked it by muscle memory, and hit record. My hand trembled, but not from the surgery. "She's always been attached to that land, like it's part of her body." Brittany laughed. "But that place is a money pit. It's time we moved forward." "Moved forward? I nearly died 3 days ago. I'm lying here with tubes in my arms and they're talking about selling my life before I've even caught my breath." "Don't worry," she added, her voice sugary now. "Drew's soft, but I've got him in the right mindset. He won't fight me on this." She ended the call. A moment later, I heard the curtain ruffle. She stepped in, pretending concern. "Oh, you're awake," she said lightly. "How are you feeling, Ellen?" I opened my eyes slowly, just enough to see her painted smile. "Tired?" I whispered. She sat in the chair beside me, scrolling her phone, likely already messaging that realtor. I turned my head toward the window, watching the gray light spill onto the linoleum floor. I said nothing. I didn't need to. I had everything I needed. They thought I was fragile. They thought I wouldn't fight, but they forgot one thing. I built that ranch, and I never signed it away. Tomorrow I would call my lawyer. The next morning a nurse brought me tea I didn't drink and a clipboard I didn't sign. My hands still shook from the anesthesia, but my mind was clear enough to remember every word Brittany said. She came by around noon with Drew trailing behind her, looking like a man who'd rather be anywhere else. "Mom," he said softly, "how are you feeling?" I watched his face instead of answering. His eyes darted between me and Brittany, who stood near the door pretending to check messages. He used to look at me like he could read my thoughts. Now he couldn't even meet my gaze. "I'll recover," I said finally. "It'll take time." "That's good," Brittany chimed in, sliding closer to the bed. "You'll feel better once you're settled somewhere easier. The ranch is too much to manage now." "Don't you think I let the question hang there?" Drew shifted uncomfortably, his thumb rubbing the back of his wedding ring. I could see the conflict working through him, the son who once promised to take care of me, and the husband now afraid to cross his wife. "I haven't decided anything," I said. Brittany smiled, that polished smile of hers, the one that never reached her eyes. "Of course not. We just want what's best for you." They left soon after Drew promising to check on me later. When the door closed, I stared at the empty chair she'd occupied. My husband Thomas died 27 years ago in a tractor rollover that left more silence than grief. I learned early that tears didn't change anything. Work did. I ran the numbers, kept the books, paid off every debt he left behind. When Drew turned 18, I told him the ranch would always be his home. I never imagined I'd have to defend that promise from him. I'd given him power of attorney years ago, just in case. He'd used it to protect me once. Now someone else was telling him how to use it. That afternoon, I called my lawyer's office from the hospital phone and asked for an appointment. By the third day, I had memorized the rhythm of the hallway footsteps. Nurses, janitors, other patients' families. I knew who lingered, who rushed. When Brittany walked past, I recognized her heels before I saw her face. She didn't come into the room this time. Just took a call outside my door, voice low, laughing. "Yes, the paperwork's almost ready," she said. "He's signing this afternoon. The place is halfway gutted already, seriously. It's like stepping into a time capsule. She won't be needing that old land anyway." I stared at the white wall across from my bed, gripping the phone under my blanket. The battery was low, but I caught every word. Later, I scrolled through her social media. A new post. Sometimes letting go of the past is the best way forward. Big changes coming. New beginnings. Land life. She posed in front of my barn. My barn. Wearing a dress that cost more than a month's feed, smiling like she'd earned it. Drew visited just after lunch, clipboard in hand, quiet. He didn't say much, only that they were moving things forward, and it was best not to stress myself. Did you sign the forms, I asked? He hesitated. Yeah, just the first set. The sale papers. He looked at the floor. It's not final, Mom. Just preliminary approvals. Brittany says we can back out if needed. I didn't say anything. I just nodded. He kissed my forehead and left, leaving behind the faint smell of guilt. That evening, a young nurse offered to help me walk to the hallway window. She thought I needed the view, but I only needed a signal. One bar of reception was enough to send the message to my lawyer. I need you to pull the deed and freeze any transfer until I'm discharged. The ranch wasn't just property. It was identity, history, stubbornness written in acres and sweat. And now it was being handed off like a burdensome heirloom. I stood a little longer by the window, the lights of town flickering far off in the dark, and told myself I'd be home before the ink dried. They said I wasn't ready to go home yet, but I signed myself out anyway. The nurses protested, the doctor frowned, but I'd made up my mind. I told them I'd recover better in my own bed. That part was true. What I didn't mention was that I didn't trust what might happen to that bed if I stayed away any longer. The drive back was quiet. My neighbor Carl picked me up in his old truck, the same one that had carried my husband's tools when he passed. We didn't talk much. I asked him to drop me at the mailbox and not wait. When I opened the gate, the hinges squealed like they hadn't been oiled in months. My heart steadied. Every sound, every smell, every worn edge, I knew them all. Inside the house was too clean, too arranged. Someone had been staging it. On the kitchen table, color swatches were fanned out beside a real estate folder. Warm, beige, harvest cream, modern dust. I didn't touch them. I just took pictures with my phone. Then I walked to the study, opened the bottom drawer of the desk, and pulled out the old lockbox. Inside were the records I'd kept for years, contracts, deeds, receipts, and one thin folder marked Crosswind LLC. That was the loan. The one I'd purchased 2 years ago when Brittany's parents nearly lost their restaurant. They'd never known it was me. I'd told the broker to handle it. Quietly thought I was helping them stay afloat. The balance was still outstanding, $174,000. I sat at the desk, the paper cool beneath my fingers. My pulse finally slowed. They thought I was a dying woman clinging to old land, but I wasn't holding on out of nostalgia. I was holding proof of ownership, of leverage, of history they couldn't erase. Outside, a car door slammed, their voices carried across the yard, carefree, unaware. I slid the folder into my bag and waited for the sound of their laughter to fade before picking up the phone. I had one more call to make before morning. I stayed quiet that night. Heard them come home, heard Brittany laughing about the awful retro tiles in the upstairs bathroom. Drew just followed silent as ever. I didn't confront them. Not yet. Instead, I took my tea to the den and opened the second lockbox. The one even Drew didn't know about. It started small. After my husband died, I bought a duplex in town using some of the life insurance. Managed it myself. 2 years later, I bought a 4-unit place downstate. Had to learn about taxes, maintenance contracts, leases. No one handed me a playbook. By the time Drew went off to college, I had rolled those profits into something bigger. 3 LLCs in total, each holding different properties or investments. One LLC owns 60% of a grain co-op outside Elgin. I sit on the board vote on pricing dividends. Nobody connects the name Elkhorn Equity back to Ellen Withers, not unless they dig, and nobody's bothered. Another LLC holds the mortgage on a lakeside restaurant, Brittany's parents' restaurant. The same one they nearly lost 2 years ago. The loan officer had approached me privately. I remembered them from a holiday dinner once, Carol fussing about the lights, Alan carving the turkey. They were desperate. I didn't lend them the money, I bought their debt outright. I figured if I could help quietly, I would. That's what I've always done. But now, that kindness has a balance, and it's mine to call in. I checked the numbers again, outstanding balance, payment history, maturity date. They were 4 months behind. I never pressed. I never had to. The ranch. It was never my biggest asset, just the most visible. It's what people saw and judged me for: dust on my boots, faded jeans, the old truck. They looked right past me, never thinking to ask what else I built. I pulled out the ledger and started writing. Not because I had to, but because I knew it was time to stop hiding what I own. Let them think I'm fragile. Let them keep underestimating me. I was just getting started. I didn't rush. I didn't throw accusations or demand apologies. That's not how I work. I let the weekend pass in silence. Brittany posted another video twirling through my kitchen in a linen dress and boots that had never seen dirt. "Welcome back to another day of poverty chic," she said, pointing to the cracked tile and humming fridge. "Y'all, the vibes here are so authentically run down." Over 100,000 people liked that video. One even commented, "You're doing the Lord's work, showing what it's like out there, out where this is my home." On Sunday evening, Drew sat down across from me at the table, avoiding my eyes. He'd made spaghetti overcooked and bland. "Brittany didn't even come to dinner. We didn't want to surprise you," he said, slowly pushing a fork around the plate. "We just thought, with your health, it might be better for everyone if you moved somewhere easier. Simpler?" I stirred my tea. "Is that why you didn't tell me?" He winced. "It wasn't supposed to feel like betrayal. We're trying to take care of you." I nodded once. "And the videos?" He flinched. I asked her to stop. "She thinks it's harmless. She's just expressing herself. She's expressing a lot." He didn't respond. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't show my hand. But later that night, while they watched something loud and forgettable in the living room, I called my lawyer. "Everything's in place," Michael said. "The deed, the recording, and the Crosswind loan contract. We'll file the cease and desist first. Then we pull their financing." I gave him the date for the showing. "Meet me at the gate. I'll handle the rest." Sometimes silence is sharper than a slap. Sometimes waiting is the loudest warning of all. They thought I was recovering. In a way, I was. Just not the kind they expected. I wasn't getting better. I was getting ready. The letter went out on a Tuesday morning. A single page, typed and dated, mailed, certified through my lawyer's office. It wasn't addressed to Drew or Brittany. It went straight to Carol and Alan Morrison, her parents. It wasn't a threat. Just a reminder. Per the terms of your note with Crosswind LLC, payment is 60 days past due. Full balance required within 30 days to avoid default. By Thursday afternoon, I knew it had arrived. My phone buzzed twice before I picked up. Carol's voice trembled on the line. "Ellen, there must be a mistake. We've been making payments." "There's no mistake," I said evenly. "The payments stopped 4 months ago. The account's delinquent." A long pause followed, then a whisper. "You own it, don't you?" "Yes." She started to cry. I ended the call before she could ask for sympathy. That evening, Drew and Brittany came storming up the porch. Drew looked embarrassed. Brittany looked ready for war. "That was a low blow," she snapped. "Dragging my parents into this. They have nothing to do with our disagreement." I set my ledger aside. "Your parents owe me $174,000. I've given them 2 years of silence. That's over. You bought that debt on purpose, didn't you? To control us?" "No," I said. "To help them. And I never said a word about it until you tried to sell my home." She took a step closer, her voice sharp and shaking. "You can't do this. You'll ruin them." I folded the letter copy and slipped it back into its envelope. I didn't do this, Brittany. You did the moment you forgot where your help came from. Drew tried to speak, but nothing came out. He looked at me like he didn't recognize the woman in front of him. Brittany turned away, muttering that she'd handle it. She wouldn't. She didn't know how. I saw them coming from the back window, black SUV polished to a shine, crawling up the gravel like it belonged here. It didn't. Brittany got out first, heels too high for the dirt path, holding a clipboard, like she thought it made her look important. The man behind her wore a blazer too crisp for real land. I could hear her before I saw her up close. Tons of potential for redevelopment. Barns a teardown, obviously, but the view prime for subdivision. They climbed the porch steps like they owned it. And then I opened the door. Brittany's hand froze in mid-gesture. The realtor blinked at me like he wasn't sure who I was supposed to be. I'm the legal owner of this property. I said, my voice low but even. And I've never agreed to sell a single acre. The air changed. The realtor took a step back. I was told the seller would meet us here. She just did, I replied. Brittany forced a laugh. Mom, don't make this into a scene. We already sent the paperwork. No, you sent forged documents signed under false pretense. You used a power of attorney that doesn't apply. And now you're trespassing. The man cleared his throat. If this is a family matter, it's a legal matter now, I said, eyes on Brittany. You can tell your agency not to return here. Any future visits will be met by law enforcement. She opened her mouth again, but I didn't let her speak. I believe this visit is over. I stepped forward just enough for the screen door to swing wider. They hesitated. Then the realtor turned. Brittany followed, fuming but quiet for once. They didn't look back. I stood on the porch until the SUV reversed down the drive. The gravel kicked up in little clouds, but the dust didn't reach me. I hadn't moved. Inside the folder sat on my table. I picked it up and dialed. My lawyer answered on the first ring. Send the default notice. We're done waiting. The video Brittany posted, the one where she's walking through my hallway, talking about transforming dead assets into dream homes, hit 1.2 million views by Friday. She thought she was unstoppable. She strutted past my family photos, mocked the cracked tiles in the mudroom, and talked about making space for modern living. But the comments changed. Why is she wearing a $1 $500 blouse in a poverty house? This woman's fake. Something doesn't add up. Whose land is she even walking on? By Saturday, someone had pulled up public property records. My name was still on everything. Her video now had more question marks than likes. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. Instead, I shifted assets. Quietly moved the last of my shares in the co-op into a trust. Adjusted ownership on the duplex to exclude Drew's name. Rewrote the charitable fund that paid for Brittany's parents' medical insurance, putting a 30-day review clause into the grant. I didn't evict them. Not yet. But the countdown had begun. Drew came by that afternoon. Alone. He didn't come storming in like Brittany did. He came with a knot in his brow and hesitation in his voice. Mom, I need to ask something. You've got money, don't you? I motioned for him to sit. Pulled out a folder from the drawer one I'd prepared weeks ago. Inside were statements from 3 banks' portfolio overviews, copies of rental income trust summaries. He flipped through slowly, page after page. This isn't just comfortable. This is a whole operation. I nodded. It always has been. You just never asked. He looked at me, and for a moment, I saw the boy I raised. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted you to see value in people, not property. He closed the folder. Does Brittany know she'll find out? The way you did, when it matters. He didn't say anything after that, just stared out the window, his jaw set. Sunday morning, he called her by her full name. That was new. By the end of the week, I sat across from Michael in his office while he drew a clean line through the final document. Power of attorney revoked. he said, sliding the paper forward for my signature. The sound of the pen scratching across the line felt heavier than it should have. Years of trust reduced to a formality. We transferred the rest of the title's next rental properties the co-op shares the Crosswind note. Everything was consolidated under my name alone. You want to keep it that way? He asked. For now, I said. Later, I'll decide who deserves it. When I drove back to the ranch, Drew's car was already there. He stood by the porch rail waiting, hands deep in his pockets. He didn't speak as I handed him a folder, the one I'd been building since the hospital. Inside were the screenshots, the loan papers, and the payment logs from the last 2 years. Every lie, every insult, every dollar. He read for almost an hour, turning pages, like each one weighed more than the last. When he finished, he looked older, somehow. You kept everything. I learned too, I said. Paper remembers when people don't. He nodded slowly. She doesn't know I'm here. I just wanted to understand. I didn't ask him to stay, and he didn't ask for forgiveness. He left with the folder under his arm, head down, walking toward his car as if the air itself had thickened. 2 weeks later, a moving truck appeared. Brittany didn't knock on my door. She just loaded boxes, keeping her eyes fixed on the ground. When the sound of the truck faded down the road, I locked the gate behind it. That night, I changed every lock in the house one by one, until only my keys turned. Then I sat at the kitchen table, opened my ledger, and wrote down the date. Just another entry, marking the day silence finally became mine again.